Welcome to the Circular Economy Show 2023. I'm Seb.
Hi, I'm Lou.
And welcome back our old viewers. Welcome to our new viewers. The Circular Economy Show is back for another year and it's bigger and faster than ever. In this episode alone, we're looking at the world of innovative packaging, food and cities. So let's go. On today's show, we'll be finding out why this alternative to plastic packaging won the prestigious Earthshot Prize.
Philip Glanville, the Mayor of Hackney, Wayne Hubbard from London, and Charlotte Thorpe from the Library of Things will be telling us how Londoners are working towards meeting their circular economy goals.
We'll be finding out how a US-based food business is engaging farmers in its supply chain to incentivise regenerative rice growing in India.
And we'll be asking our experts some of your big questions.
Certainly feels like it's going to be a ram-packed episode of the show. And indeed, it's your big screen debut, Lou. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling excited, nervous, thrilled, and terrified of making those rookie mistakes.
We absolutely have complete confidence in you.
Thank you, my friend. That makes me feel so much better.
Regular viewers of the show will remember that last year a big subject on the show was the Global Plastics Treaty, and the ongoing negotiations around the treaty are broadly supported by international institutions, governments and businesses, and indeed that will be a big topic for us again in 2023. And in related news this month, we saw that the UK government has announced a ban on some single-use plastics. Apparently it's going to be affecting many of our takeaway meals, and we're seeing similar measures to this being introduced in many parts of the world.
And something that can address some of the challenges that these businesses are going to face has just come from NOTPLA, who've just won the Earthshot £1 million prize with their seaweed substitute for plastic. We sent the Circular Economy Show's Jess to NOTPLA to find out exactly what it's all about.
Hi, I'm Jess, and for this month's Startup Spotlight, I'm here in London visiting the NOTPLA offices to find out how and why their innovations bring the circular economy to life and tackle climate change.
And I can announce that the 2022 Earthshot for Build a Waste-Free World goes to NOTPLA.
NOTPLA is a sustainable packaging startup based in London, developing a range of packaging solutions made from seaweed and plants as alternatives to single-use plastics. We really believe that we can look at nature for solutions instead of using synthetic materials like plastic. And we've been growing a portfolio of solutions including edible bubbles for marathons and festivals, takeaway food containers for home-delivered food and street meals, and films and flexible sachets for all sorts of different dry powders. So the range is expanding every day.
NOTPLA is circular, and the products we produce are circular because we make them from seaweed and plants, and then at the end of their life they biodegrade, eventually turning back into compost which could be used to feed those seaweed and plants. So it's really quite closed loop. So the reason that I think NOTPLA products are really special is we design true solutions. We have wormeries in-house, and if the worms don't eat the products, then it never goes out. We really want to producing something that will leave no trace in the world. We look to nature to see how that happens in nature, and then whatever nature does, we try and repeat that. So we're making something which is truly biodegradable.
NOTPLA began as a university project when friends Rodrigo and Pierre came together.
In the early days, we were working with my co-founder Rodrigo in our kitchen. We didn't have access to a lab. We were just looking at lots of different natural materials and how they could be a potential edible packaging or biodegradable packaging. So we started with the usual starches, cellulose, different types of gums from different roots and different plants. And eventually that's when we stumbled upon the technique for making fake caviar that uses seaweed extracts to create the little kind of like balls of fish-flavored liquid. And that was a revelation. We were like, wow, this is so cool that you can use seaweed to make these kind of products. How can we make it bigger, more resistant? How can we really take it away from the world of like food technologies and bring it into packaging? And that's the point where we also started to research more about seaweed and realize how incredible a material it was. Like grows very fast, doesn't require fresh water or fertilizer, it sequesters carbon, it's naturally biodegradable. So it felt like this material had to be one of the solutions to our plastics problem. Our innovation is very important because the materials we use today have a huge toll on our natural environment, on ourselves, so we have to stop using plastic. Plastic is this material that is extremely high performance. It has its use, but single use is not one of them. And it's very important that we stop using it for applications where consumption is so quick and where it's not required to have such properties.
So they've won the Earthshot Prize, but we want to know, what are the biggest remaining challenges?
So we are using natural materials, we're using sort of newly found supply chains from seaweed sourcing to other plant extracts. So our materials are by nature quite expensive due to the lower scale that they operate in. We are moving towards a path towards profitability. We're very nearly there with some of our products, and we are there with one or two. But it's we understand that it's a challenge, and that's why these kind of support exercises, the Earthshot Prize, really help to kind of move us closer to that.
When you look at the cost of traditional plastics, it's so low, it's virtually low, because it doesn't take into account any of the externalities. So you're really not comparing like for like. All the costs on marine ecosystems, on our health, on climate change is not built into the price at the purchase point.
I think from a policy perspective, it's great that governments and organisations are waking up to the plastic issues that we're facing, and there are single-use plastic taxes that exist in the EU, in the UK, and across the globe. So that really helps us in kind of explaining that to customers, and also understanding that from a pricing perspective, taxes will have to be paid on plastic, single-use plastic going forward.
Thanks to Earthshot Prize, we're going to be able to have like more chemists, more machineries, and more engineers to keep scaling up.
Thanks to the Earthshot Prize, we're now getting reach far beyond Europe, and we are getting a lot of interest from the US, Southeast Asia, all sorts of different markets. So the goal for us is to make sure that the technology is mature and ready so that we can look at those expansion territories and find the right partners locally that can really amplify what we can do.
So on top of trying to sell more and more takeaway boxes, we are also interested in selling the coating directly to converters and paper mill. So that's something really new and exciting, like to work directly with these new stakeholders.
What we really see as like our scale up is that we provide the input materials for others to run those machines and operate all of their kind of like production with NOTPLA instead of plastic. So by going up in the value chain, that means that we can have so much more impact. And so we are looking at proving to all of those industry partners that it's really worth putting those materials and those products on the market so that they can then take it upon themselves to use those for their own clients. This is a little celebration cocktail for the Earthshot Prize. Cheers.
Join me next time when we'll explore how mushroom-based materials could revolutionise the built environment.
Gosh, we should try and get ourselves some of those blogs for the Circular Economy show, Lou. We've got things to celebrate.
We have, and if they're filled with a nice ice-cold Chablis, I feel that would be excellent.
Yeah, I think mine could be a beer, although I might need a few of them.
Yeah. Send them on down to us, please, guys.
We've just seen an example of innovation that is tackling greenhouse gas emissions. But what about a city where there are hundreds of those innovations playing out at scale, impacting our everyday lives? Well, we've recently created a short series of films that explore different aspects of the circular economy in the city of London. In the first of those films, we visit the borough of Hackney, where we find out how the circular economy is delivering benefits to the community, creating jobs, and is a key part of their approach to tackling climate change.
My name's Philip Glanville. I'm the elected Mayor of Hackney, and I'm also Chair of the Transport and Environment Committee at London Councils, which leads on our climate change work. I think we've been really committed to circular economy for a number of years. We've never sort of let up on the impact it can have on climate change, but also reducing consumption. So we have a campaign called Zero Waste Hackney, which is directed towards residents to think about how they can reduce their waste. Some of those interventions are how they reuse their clothes and materials. We have repair sessions, we have reuse sessions. We've also invested in the Library of Things here.
So Library of Things is a place where you can borrow useful things that you don't really need to buy or own. So lots of the stuff in our house and cupboards we use for a few minutes each year. So you can borrow things for cleaning, DIY, gardening, and it just costs a few pounds a day to rent it rather than buy. But we're also building a community of people who want to share skills with their neighbours to help them learn how to do practical tasks around their house or mending and repair as well. So Library of Things started as a grassroots community movement in West Norwood. It's existed organically around, and we were inspired by tool libraries in Toronto and Berlin and places like that. But we saw how neighbours really kind of embraced it as a project and an asset for the community. So we found a permanent home in Crystal Palace, and then from there was so much interest from other communities. We set up as a social enterprise to help other people bring a Library of Things to their neighbourhood too. So we're now open in 11 locations across London, and there's lots more on the way.
Hi, my name's Wayne Hubbard. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of London, which is a partnership of the Mayor of London and London's boroughs, and we're on a mission to revolutionise our relationship with stuff. What worries me is that the current cost of living crisis, coupled with recovery from COVID and the economic problems that's created, might mean that it's easier to have a more blanket approach to supporting businesses rather than to target and support circular businesses. And we think it's really important to support circular business, but it seems to me good economic sense to support businesses that exhibit characteristics that reduce the need on extended supply chains, or that make the most efficient use of materials, or that redistribute stuff in a way that helps people who don't have access to certain resources, or that reduce the need for landfilling of food that creates greenhouse gas emissions from landfill. All of these things seem to me to be completely rational and sensible solutions. And London is a really great place to do this work because we're blessed with a really active community of startups and entrepreneurs.
From an environmental perspective, businesses like Library of Things and projects are really important in the transition to a circular economy. So it helps both in the sense that we're reducing waste, because by sharing it affects demand, like less things need to be produced in the first place because we're sharing things. But then also because we repair and mend all of our things, we have a thing technician who helps to keep things alive. That reduces things from going to landfill too. And of people who borrow, I think it's like 60% of people say that they're more likely to repair or reuse. So it's a really great way into getting people to think about how they can live more sustainably.
I think we're seeing Hackney residents really think about what they use and why, and their contribution to climate change and unnecessary waste. It's really important that we work with other London boroughs, inner and outer London, the different types of economy, the different places that people live and the different challenges, the complexity of a city like London face. So we've got 4 work streams underneath looking at the biggest contributions to waste and consumption-based emissions in the capital. So we've got Hackney leading on food waste. which is really important in reducing consumption, but also a more equitable food system in the capital. We've got Wandsworth looking at textiles, we've got Hammersmith and Fulham looking at electricals, and we've got Richmond looking at plastics. And the most important thing is the collaborative effect that we can look at with London boroughs working together in new ways, innovating, working with citizens, working with business, working with the GLA, working with organisations like London to come up with those solutions that are actually going to work.
The circular economy is a massive economic opportunity for London. We did a report recently that identified that by 2030, if we follow the Mayor of London's London Environment Strategy for waste, by 2030 we will have 500,000 people working in jobs around the circular economy, both direct, indirect and core jobs.
We've seen with the London report and the work that London councils are doing that the circular economy and the skills that are going to be needed across London, and especially in boroughs like Hackney, to see that economy grow and reach its potential, have a huge contribution to London's economic growth and that just transition. So the potential by 2030, as we make that journey to net zero, of seeing almost 300,000 new jobs created.
So in that film, we've seen how the circular economy can deliver environmental benefits, economic benefits, and benefits to the job market in wider London and also specifically in Hackney. Now, to just add a little bit of salt to the end of that delicious dish of cities, we've got our European Activation Manager, Josh Newton, in the studio with us. Josh, why is London such a significant and interesting example of a city applying the circular economy?
Sure, thanks for having me. So London is one of the biggest cities in Europe. Something like 9 million people live there. 30 million people travel through as tourists every year. They're a really good friend of the foundation and are actually a strategic partner. And they're a super ambitious city, so they've got some really big goals. They want to be, they are the world's first national park city. They want to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. They want to double the green economy in the city, and the London boroughs have recently set this goal to reduce consumption-based emissions by 2/3. What's big and what's really exciting for us is that to tackle all of these goals, they are using circular economy as a solutions framework.
That's brilliant. Josh, why are cities on the whole such interesting places to make the circular economy happen?
So I like to think that, well, we all agree that the future of the world is urban. The economy evolves around cities. Most people live there already. About 50% of the world's population. By 2050, that's going to be something like 70%. But already they are responsible for around 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, around 50% of waste production in the world, and responsible for something like 75% of material consumption. So if we want the circular economy transition to be effective, cities are not only important, but they are arguably the front line, because we need to change and rethink how materials flow around them.
There's something about them being contained as well. There are people who administer over cities in a way that can have great influence. They're points of influence as individual units, as many as thousands of cities in the world. That leads me into my question, Josh, because as you well know, I'm someone who likes to copy things. So if I see a TikTok dance on TikTok, I'm like, I want to do it in my kitchen. The equivalent of that in your world, I imagine, is policymakers seeing what London is doing and trying to replicate it in their own cities. Is that possible? Can other cities learn from London?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's there's no point reinventing the wheel. We can look at lots of really good examples around the world. We're about to launch a report with ICLEI that recognises actions, systemic circular solutions happening across lots of different value chains in 30 different towns, cities, regions across Europe. But London is a really good place to start. They've been working on the circular economy for a very long time. They were one of the first cities to adopt a route map back in 2017, led by London. And the work that they do on value chains, what Wayne was talking about in the video, about business support, they're not just trying to reduce waste. They're trying to use the circular economy to create jobs, to help make cities a better place to live.
So Josh, is London on target to reduce consumption-based emissions?
That's a really tricky question.
You don't come on the Circle Comedy show, Josh, to get the easy questions.
Yeah, well, this one isn't easy. I would say that they have, the London boroughs and the London councils that have adopted the target of 2/3 by 2030 is super ambitious. There's not many organisations that really consider Scope 3 emissions or consumption-based emissions in their goals. Most net zero targets that organisations have only look at Scope 1 and Scope 2. So the fact that London is even looking at a target like this is really impressive. And there's only a few cities we know of, as well as governments, that have already started to do that. Setting the target, however, is one thing. Having the capacity and the ability to do it is another. And they've got 7 years now to achieve that goal. And I think they're very open that they can't do it alone. They need businesses to work closer with them. And they also need support from central government to help them improve data and help them with financing to trial really scalable systemic solutions.
Thanks so much, Josh. Did you guys know that rice causes as much greenhouse gas emissions as the aviation industry? In this next film, we'll be finding out how regenerative agriculture can actually reduce those emissions.
Can't overstate the importance of rice. Over 1 billion people derive their livelihood from rice. It represents 20% of the caloric intake for the world's population. 1/4 to 1/3 of fresh water reserve is allocated to the growing of rice in flooded fields. And when water is flooding a field, it's creating microbes that are producing methane gas. 11 to 15% of man-made methane is a result of flooded rice fields. The economics for many smallholder farmers of rice is dire. Many of them are at the bottom of the pyramid and just can't make ends meet. Any conversation about a circular economy has to take into effect people in the field who are growing the food. Food will be a defining issue of the 21st century. The problem is onboarding another billion people on the planet. We need to grow more rice on less land.
We have to be very, very careful how we produce rice, because with the usage of pesticide, chemical fertilizers, water depletion, yield is declining. Our soil is dying.
The system of rice intensification is an agroecological way to grow rice that is regenerative in nature, getting bigger yields without proprietary seeds from multinational companies and the accompanying synthetic chemical fertilizers that go along with them. It's been adopted by about 25 million farmers. There's little changes in how rice is grown. SRI specifies younger seedling planted as a single seed in rows.
एक पेड़ लगाते हैं, पहले हम बहुत लगाते थे 10-12 पेड़। वो रासायनिक से उसमें दवाई डालते हैं, हम लोग नहीं डालते हैं। तो उनका खर्चा भी ज़्यादा है हमारा। उसमें टाइम की बचत इसलिए ना कि वो जब सीरी पद्धति से लगाते हैं ना तो जल्दी-जल्दी लग जाता है।
The plant gets more aeration, the root develops much better so that it can harvest more nutrients to give better yield.
The major difference with SRI and conventional rice growing is that the fields are not continuously flooded.
There is no anaerobic condition in the soil. There is no production of methane.
In communities that have transitioned to SRI, the soil is drastically improved because of the microbial activity.
Before we started regenerative cultivation, we have analyzed the soil. After 4 years, we see 50 to 70% increase in the carbon.
Farmers can use 90% less seed, 50% less water, double their yields, and produce much more income.
बाद में तो सर बारिश से ही हो जाता है, फिर नीचे का पानी लगाना पड़ता ना फिर। सर टाइम तो सुबह जाते हैं, जैसे तो सुबह अपने घर का करके चले जाते हैं, भैंस का, गाय का, सब चीज़ का। खेत में जाते हैं, खेत से भी 2 घंटे पहले घर आ जाते हैं।
परिवर्तन हमारे परिवार में परिवर्तन ये है कि जब हमारा खर्चा कम हो रहा है तो हमें बचत भी हो रही है और हम अपने बच्चों को अच्छी जगह
Lotus Foods is a specialty rice company. We're really proud that we are keeping the biodiversity of rice alive with creating markets for heirloom rices. We're creating stable supply chain that can provide food to feed the increasing population. And we have to do it by putting the carbon into the soil, not into the atmosphere.
We have the fantastic farmers who understand the importance of SRI cultivation. At the same time, we have the Lotus Foods who are buying our rice to give the best quality products for the consumers around the world.
As a business, we have seen that these increased costs have paid off because consumers are understanding benefits of regenerative agriculture. As Lotus Foods grew, we knew that to be successful in the marketplace, we needed to create value-added products. So these value-added products included a rice ramen, rice pad thai noodles, rice udon noodles. So we were the first company to take rice and make a rice-based ramen. Organic SRI is inherently regenerative. We're talking about animal welfare, community, and people health. The reason why we wanted to be one of the first companies to have a regenerative organic certified rice so that we could show the world how important it was to grow rice, this amazing crop that feeds half the world's population, without greenhouse gas emissions, without lots of water. Actually, it's good for business. That's the bottom line. Businesses are in the business of creating wealth, but it's not just wealth for themselves anymore. And that's where SRI comes in. It benefits the farmer, it benefits the land, it benefits the community, it benefits the consumer who eats this more nutritious rice. It's wealth for all stakeholders.
Welcome back to the studio, and welcome to the studio, Nick Jeffries from the MacArthur Foundation. What I literally always say about you, Nick, is you've forgotten more about the circular economy than I'll ever know. And indeed, you were involved in producing the film we just watched.
Yes, it was a real, and thanks Seb for that intro, it was a real eye-opening film to be involved with. I mean, who could imagine, like, one crop is responsible for more emissions than the entire aviation industry? I mean, it's just mind-blowing.
It is a startling, surprising number. And I guess what that film is about is the solutions, like a vision for regenerative rice farm, implementation in a specific context. My question, and I guess maybe the audience question, is what would it take to replicate or scale up what we saw in that film?
Well, I think that's a very important question. Yeah, if we want to get from the 4% that we're at the moment, 4% of rice growing land is grown in this regenerative way, up to about 25% or more, where we can make a meaningful contribution to the climate emergency, I think there's three things that we need to look at. Firstly, more support for farmers. So by that I mean more training, financial support to buy equipment. As you saw from the film, there's certain equipment that you need for the spacing of the seedlings and the water control. Secondly, there's a role for policy or government. So there's 11 countries, including Vietnam, Senegal, and other countries. They actually have SRI as part of their NDCs.
What's an NDC? Just for anyone, not me obviously, but anyone who might not know that term.
Okay, well, NDC stands for Nationally Determined Contributions, and it is the specific plans that each country has to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And the third and last is, I think there's a role for businesses. So how can brands, how can retailers, how can bulk ingredient buyers, how can they follow the example of Lotus and engage with their supply chain, change their procurement practices, and send out a demand signal to the farmers, the rice farmers of the world, to produce rice in this way?
So training and support for farmers who are trying to farm in this way, the right policy context, and kind of interestingly, an example that film was really driving at, the role that businesses, big buyers of food can play in really like starting to get the system moving.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. Great film. Now, I'd like to challenge you, if I may, with 3 burning questions that we constantly do have coming into the show. And your first one is, what is regenerative?
What is regenerative? All right, well, for me, regenerative means moving from doing less harm to actually trying to have a positive impact on the environment and society. So that's the first thing. The second is about putting life at the centre of all decisions. So when I talk about all decisions, I'm talking about business decisions, financial investment decisions, policy decisions, and things like urban planning decisions. So yeah, putting life at the centre. And then finally, I guess, nature, looking to nature. Nature is the only model we have for regenerative. So I think we need to look to nature's behaviours, structures, systems, because it's a rich repository of ideas on how you can be regenerative.
I like that you're going with powers of 3, Nick. You obviously took the same Communication 101 seminar that I did. And it makes my job really easier in recapping. So it's more good, not less bad, life at the centre, and inspiration from nature. It's kind of worked for a while, so we might be able to learn something from it.
Yeah.
Nice one, guys. Now for the biggie, Nick. How does the circular economy challenge climate change?
All right. Oh, tricky question. Okay. Well, I'm afraid we're going to go for 2 here. There's the two parts, the challenges to climate change. There is a renewable energy, like we need more renewable energy. That's sort of half the challenge. But the other half is the bits which renewable energy can't solve, and that's the materials, yeah? The material challenge. And circular economy is a framework for making more effective use of our materials by sharing, by having new business models, by recycling, by using renewable or biomaterials. And so, yeah, but also, we can go beyond that because circular economy is also about regenerating nature or regenerative production. And it is possible to grow food and fibres and fuel in a way that actually draws carbon down from the atmosphere rather than at the moment it emits it. So I think circular economy and the climate change are inextricably linked because there is no zero or low carbon future without the circular economy.
And that split that you mentioned comes from a publication that you contributed to called Completing the Picture, where it says that 45% is materials, 55% is renewable energy. And what always strikes me about that is it says, well, even if we manage to get to 100% renewable energy, which is a huge feat in itself, that would still only tackle 55% of the problem, which is not enough to make the kind of progress and towards 2 degrees or whatever the targets are on greenhouse gas emissions now.
Finally, what are a couple of examples of circular economy innovation you've seen recently that you think are really great?
Well, what I love, solution projects, companies, initiatives, materials, whatever, that are circular and solve lots of different challenges in one elegant way. So climate challenges, biodiversity challenges, societal challenges. And the SRI that we just watched, that's a good example. But to give you an example from the ocean, so from the US, it's a company called Greenwave, and what they promote and demonstrate is a system of ocean farming called regenerative ocean farming. And what essentially they are these structures that are sort of 3D, they sort of are slightly below the surface of the water, and they're made of things like ropes and baskets. And you can grow all types of marine products, shellfish, seaweed, kelp. And they're very, very productive, and you can use these products for food, fertilizers, biomaterials. But also, they sequester carbon because kelp and other marine plants are really, really good at sequestering carbon. They create these lovely marine ecosystems. They regenerate the oceans. Like our oceans have really suffered a little bit in the last few years, but they are very good at regenerating marine ecosystems. They help reduce storm surges. They create jobs. Basically, there's a multitude of benefits. And so, yeah, that would be my one. Greenwave from the US.
And I think that's got to be one of my favourites as well. Thanks so much for that, Nick. And now it's down to you. We want your questions, anything circular economy based. It can be a phrase we use, a word, a concept. Ask, why don't they do this? Why are they doing that? Send them in and we'll have Nick or another one of our experts here in the next few months to answer them on your behalf.
And you can send those in by @ing us at Ellen MacArthur Foundation on LinkedIn or at Circular Economy on Twitter using the hashtag AskTheCE Show. Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Circle Me Show, the first episode of 2023. We've got so much more to come this year, and to make sure you don't miss any of it, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified every time we publish a new episode of The Circle Me Show, and indeed, every time the Ellen MacArthur Foundation publishes new content on the circular economy. We'll see you next time.